Hello everyone, my name is Muhammad Ali Ijaz, and today I would be presenting to you Pakistan for the country media analysis assignment. Pakistan is based in Southeast Asia. It's a country surrounded by India on its east, China to the north, and Afghanistan and Iran to the west. And it has the Arabian Sea to its south. It's basically an Islamic republic, and it is the world's fifth most populous country with a population of over 225 million people. It's predominantly a Muslim country, which means that 97% of the population is Muslim, and there are minorities as well. Minorities include Christians, Hindus, and Sikhs, along with other religious minorities. It is also the 33rd largest country in terms of its landmass. And its political system is that of a nation state and a constitutional democracy. Its political system is based on an elected form of governance. It has elections after every 4 years. There are these parties that fight for those elections, so it's basically a federal parliamentary. It's a federal parliamentary republic. Talking about its economy, so the economy, when we talk about the currency, uh, it has the Pakistani rupee as its currency, the gross domestic product, the GDP, and the GDP growth rate, as you could see, is not very good compared to developed countries. It's still a developing country. It's relatively not doing as well as the developed countries because of its many economic problems, which would talk about. So it's basically an agricultural based economy with with a very good agriculture base. It's one of the major exporters of cotton, wheat, and rice. And at the same time, it also manufactures quite a lot of textiles. Denim is a major export. Finished goods include sports goods, leatherware, and surgical instruments. So these are the some of the primary export commodities that Pakistan exports to the world. Right. So, talking about some of the economic problems, it has a big population, and the population, uh, there's a relentless increase in the population. So, despite the real growth in the economy, output per capita has risen only slowly. The population explosion is a problem, along with corruption and insecurity and instability, both external and internal. But at the same time, the IT sector is growing, the automobile industry is growing, and the textile sector is flourishing. And the textile sector contributes to 60% of the country's total exports, which amount to $5.2 billion. And If we talk about the culture, Pakistan has a very diverse culture. And This is due to the multitude of ethnicities and languages. Urdu and English are the official languages, and but there are over 2 dozen local languages that are spoken within Pakistan. They're regional languages, but some of the major regional languages include Punjabi, Sindhi, Pashto, and Balochi. Uh, as I was mentioning, the rich culture and history of Pakistan, it has one of the most diverse, um, cultures in the world, and this has to do with its with its very rich history. Thanks to its historical, geographical, and ethnic diversity, Pakistan's culture is a melting pot of Indian, Persian, Afghan, Central Asian, South Asian, and Western Asian influences. So there are over 15 major ethnic groups in Pakistan with a diversity of customs, dress, food, and music. And of course, it has a very rich history as well. The Indus Valley civilization, which is as old as Mesopotamian and Egyptian civilizations, was um, originated in Pakistan, and it's one of the oldest known civilizations, the Indus Valley civilization. And because of the rich history and multitude of, of religions that once flourished within the region, there's a lot of potential for religious tourism because at one time it was part of a Buddhist empire. Um, a few like many centuries ago, it was a major Buddhist hub, and there are a lot of Buddhist tourists that actually come here to pay homage and to visit their ancient sites. Talking about the media system, Pakistan's media system is flourishing. It has a very um, ongoing happening media scene. The state media is controlled um, by Pakistan Television and Radio Pakistan. These are the two major state media. Pakistan Television is state owned, and so is Radio Pakistan. But there are over 100 private media channels as well, and 257 privately owned radio stations. So the media landscape at a glance, Pakistan has a very vibrant media landscape, amongst the most dynamic and outspoken in South Asia. To a large extent, the media enjoys freedom of expression, and more than 100 channels beam soaps, music programs, films, satire, political talk shows, and news of the hour. And sometimes these channels are criticized for being unprofessional and politically biased, but these channels have made a great contribution to the media landscape and to Pakistani society. Uh, just to let you know, it was only in early 2000 that Pakistan opened up its media. Before the year 2000, Pakistan only had one channel, which was the Pakistan Television, and it's only after the year 2000 that Pakistan opened up opportunities for private media channels to function. So this is a glance at the diversity of channels that we have in Pakistan. There are entertainment channels, educational channels, sports channels, etc. So this gives an idea of the media scene. So the government media policy is to promote and nurture Pakistani culture and cultural diversity by countering the cultural onslaught from all across the world through traditional and digital media. So this is like the government's official policy, and to implement that policy, they have a watchdog, an official media watchdog called PEMRA, which is Pakistan Electronic Media Regulatory Authority. So this authority regulates media. They look over the channels, and they're sometimes criticized for censorship and banning of channels based on the government's uh, policy of preserving culture and trying to um, preserve religious and cultural values. And at the same time, if there is too much criticism, they might clamp down on those channels as well. But more or less, it is very tolerant. Um, public diplomacy efforts. When we talk about the public diplomacy efforts, I will be sharing with you two very good examples of public diplomacy by the Pakistani government. And the first example is the billion tree tsunami. This was a plantation effort to boost Pakistan's image locally and internationally. And we're going to be talking about the international video loggers and the use of social media to promote tourism and positive image of Pakistan across the world. So coming to the billion tree tsunami, how did this help in the image building? So this was basically a project that was developed by the present government, and the billion tree tsunami was an afforestation project initiated by the present government, and this involved plantation drives across the country. 732 million new saplings were planted, 153 saplings trees were distributed among the public. So, this created new jobs, it benefited the environment, it increased the tree cover, and of course, the increase in tree cover, planting trees, is eventually going to help the economy, it's going to help in tourism, and it's going to increase biodiversity, and it has health benefits as well. So the billion tree tsunami was acknowledged by the WWF, and this project makes Pakistan to be one of the countries that have successfully completed the Bond Challenge. We're going to be talking more about the Bond Challenge, and I'll be filling you in on that. The billion tree tsunami objectives, according to the government, is that 10 billion tree tsunami is initiated to revive forest and wildlife resources in Pakistan, to improve the overall conservation of existing protected areas, encourage ecotourism, community engagement, and job creation through conservation. So this was the objective for the billion tree tsunami program. But as we would see, this was also the success of this program was used for public diplomacy and image building as well. How did that happen? That happened when Pakistan was one of the first countries to win the Bond Challenge, and the Bond Challenge was a global effort to bring 150 million hectares of the world's deforested and degraded lands into restoration by 2020. And Khyber Pakhtunkhwa was the first province and the first province to register with the Bond Challenge for the restoration of its forests. And it was the first in the world to complete the challenge, and that too in half the planned time. And this made headlines across the world. So this province was the first to complete the challenge of planting 150 million hectares of trees, and this made headlines, and it really helped the government increase its image. It helped the government with its positive image both internationally and locally. So the international media outlets praised the billion tree tsunami, and Imran Khan, the prime minister, was praised for spearheading this project. So this news was covered in Voice of America it was appreciated by IUCN and Reuters and Al Jazeera. They all reported on this particular project and its outcomes. So what were the results? So the billion tree tsunami hashtag was used by the Pakistani government as well, and the hashtag went viral locally and internationally, and it helped spread the news. The use of the social media and hashtags to spread the billion tree tsunami attracted international media attention, and it gave Pakistan the positive international press and media coverage that it needed, because Pakistan has had really bad press lately, and because of security issues, Pakistan was mostly reported in the Western media as, in terms of terrorism, in terms of instability, and all things negative. And this was a break that the Pakistani government needed, and they got this break. All the international media attention was on how uh, you know uh, how Pakistan was helping plant trees, and how it was contributing to fight global climate change. So it really helped shape the image of the country, uh, and it helped disassociate with the negative news related to Pakistan. Uh, and it was a well thought out public diplomacy initiative that improved the government's image domestically and internationally. So, coming to the second example of public diplomacy, uh, of how social media and international video loggers in Pakistan sort of helped the government, and were used by the government for public diplomacy. So these are a bunch of international YouTubers and Instagrammers who go around the world, and they came to Pakistan as well. And this time they were facilitated by the government. They were encouraged by the government to come to Pakistan. They already had like millions of followers, and these were successful YouTubers, and inviting them to Pakistan really benefited Pakistan's image, because they went around the country, reported positive news. Their videos were viewed millions of times from all over the world, and so like Pakistan became an unlikely destination for the Western social media influencers. They produce glossy, upbeat travel content. An example is of Rosie Gabrielle. She is a Canadian Instagrammer and YouTuber. She did a solo motorbike tour across Pakistan, and she quickly gained hundreds and thousands of more followers. And some of the other big names that came to Pakistan is the Food Ranger with 4.6 million YouTube subscribers, and Drew Berwinski with 2.1 million YouTube subscribers. And these guys, they traveled all across Pakistan, made really engaging, interesting video content, and this helped Pakistan get into the Forbes top 10 under the radar places. So Forbes magazine, put this up, and this went viral, and the Pakistani government used this as a public diplomacy, um, win, and th- then this was all over the international media as well, at least in part because of the influx of YouTubers and Instagrammers. Forbes listed Pakistan as one of its top 10 under the radar holiday destinations for 2020, and so did a leading magazine, a tourism magazine, Condé Nast Traveler, ranked Pakistan number one as well. So, from terrorism to tourism, that was, I think, a public diplomacy win for the Pakistani government as well. Uh, so, under the Prime Minister Imran Khan's government, this trend was encouraged, and tourism is being enthusiastically supported and encouraged, at least in part because of the YouTubers and Instagrammers that I mentioned. And that's helping the economy. It's helping the tourist economy locally. It's helping generate jobs, And Pakistan has a huge potential to make effect of its cultural diplomacy to build strong ties with the rest of the world and harness the mutual benefits gained from it. As I mentioned, Pakistan has a lot of historical, archaeological sites. It has a diversity of cultures. All these things can be used and were used in this particular public diplomacy campaign. The country's image over the years, as I mentioned, was dented because of terrorist threats and corruption and all these negative things. But the internet, as a tool for cultural exchange, was used, and it encouraged international tourism to highlight Pakistan's strengths, and that's exactly what it did. And yeah, so in this aspect, if we talk more about public diplomacy, these international YouTubers facilitated the government in their public diplomacy efforts, and the government basically harnessed them uh, for their own objectives. In the past, Pakistan remained amongst other nations that have not benefited from public diplomacy over several other issues. And in 2020, this is interesting to note. It's only in 2020 that the Prime Minister of Pakistan actually formed, made public diplomacy policy. So before that, the public diplomacy policy was sort of non-existent. So in 2020, the prime minister got things to got his act together, and he formed the Strategic Communications Division, a new branch of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they basically designed to adopt public diplomacy in specific areas. So this means that there was a it was an effort on part of the government to be systematic and plan for public diplomacy efforts. So the permanent representative of Pakistan to the United Nations, New York, London, Berlin, and Beijing and Manama have set up public diplomacy programs to promote public diplomacy of Pakistan. Another quick example of public diplomacy, a successful example, is that of the Pakistani pavilion at the World Expo in Dubai 2020. So there's a World Expo going on, and this is the Pakistani pavilion designed by Pakistan's leading artist. And this really made headlines, and the Pakistani pavilion crossed a milestone of 100,000 visitors within just 18 days, and it became one of the greatest shows for the Expo 2020. And again, this made a lot of headlines because of the beautiful design, and because of so many people visiting the exhibition, the Pakistani exhibition, the Pakistani pavilion. So yeah, this concludes my presentation, and just a few concluding remarks. Just to conclude, the public diplomacy efforts paid off for Pakistan. These efforts that I just mentioned, and they've actually boosted trade, they've boosted tourism, international cooperation, and the soft image of Pakistan. So, thank you very much for your attention, and goodbye.